If you're collecting an evil army, no doubt sooner or later you're going to want to paint a really impressive looking bladed weapon in the hands of your commander. So in this video we're going to show you a fantastic method of doing this for a really cool hellish looking blade effect. Now I'm going to be using a Chaos Space Marine as my example, who you can see I've got just here, and he's undercoated with Mechanica Standard Grey, but you can do this technique from any undercoat colour that you want to use. The first paint you need for it though is Corn Red, and this is to get a nice space coat to establish the main effect of what we're going to do. And to apply this I'm going to be using a medium base brush because it's a nice size for the kind of area we want to cover here. So like with any base paint, what you need to do is get some of this onto your palette like this, and then you need to thin it down with some water. And it's especially important here because we need this paint to be as thin as possible for the following effects to work. So adding some water in there like this just to thin it down. You want to get it on your palette so it's a little bit transparent. There you can see some of the palette showing through. It's a little bit pinky, so that's perfect for what we need here. With that done, we can now start applying it to the blade of the power sword we've got here, and you want to apply this with as few strokes as possible. So try and go really broad strokes like this, covering as much of the blade as you can all the way down in one smooth motion to ensure you get a nice smooth finish. With that base coat applied, we're now ready to start building up the effect on the sword blade. And to do this, what we're going to be doing is building up from a dark red all the way up through a bright yellow, and then even a little bit of white as well. And to do it, we need to start out with some Lamia Medium mixed in some colours. These colours are going to be Evil Sunz Scarlet, followed by Troll Slayer Orange, and then finally Uriel Yellow. And with that done, we're then just going to use White Scar on its own just to finish off the blade with a nice edge highlight to make it look nice and sharp. But first of all, we're going to be using Evil Sunz Scarlet to start building up our effect, and I'm going to be diluting this heavily using Lamia Medium. I'll start with Evil Sunz Scarlet using a medium layer brush. You don't need very much of it, just a small amount on your palette there like that, and then we'll start adding some medium into it. So make sure your brush is clean before you do so, so you don't contaminate it with any colour. And then I'm going to start out with 2 brushfuls. So that's 1 brushful there, and then another one, and then start introducing some of that Evil Sunz Scarlet into it to make a heavily diluted mix. So you can see there just how thin it is. If I start painting it thinly, you can see how transparent that is. So the trick here is to make sure your brush isn't overloaded before you apply it. So just use some tissue to get rid of the excess like that. Pick up a little bit on your brush, and then what we're looking to do is to paint a thin coat of this onto the blade, but on opposite sides we want to be at the top and the bottom. So I'm going to start on the cutting edge at the top here, and start by applying from there, and in one go just bring it all the way down past that notch there to about 2/3 of the way down the blade. So like that. Just keep an eye out for any large splodges appearing. Just move away with your brush if that happens. Then on the back of the blade you want to do the opposite. So again about 2/3 up this time, going down to the base of it. We've got this little energy node on here, so I'm just going to go around there like that. But there we go. Now you'll see that first coat doesn't appear to have made any difference. You can only really see it where it's still wet just there, but that's exactly what we want, because once that's dry, you do the same technique once again, but this time not quite so far down. So I'll show you here. I'm going to start on the tip of the blade, bringing it down, and just avoiding that bit, it's still wet there, but I'm going to bring it down to around about there this time. So the idea is that through progressive coats, the red gets stronger the further up you get there, and the further down you get there. It's going to take around about 5 or so coats to do this, so just make sure each one's dry before you add the next one, and really take your time. I've finished building up those layers of Evil Sunz Scarlet now, and you can see towards the tip and the base of the blade at opposite sides, the colours become a little bit brighter. And now we're going to move on to the next colour, which is Troll Slayer Orange, to repeat this technique. So as before, it's heavily diluted using Lamia Medium. This time I'm not going to go quite so far down though, so I'm going to go to around about halfway on that side, and then the same on the back of the blade like this. And as before, once this is dry, you apply a second coat, then a third, then a fourth, and keep on going, getting further and further towards the tip and the base to make the colour stronger in those areas. And once that orange has been built up, you can then move on to the yellow using Uriel Yellow. Again, the same mix with Lamia Medium, and this time we're going to go down around about 1/3 of the way. So around about to there, and then from the base, about 1/3 of the way up from the base. So there like that. And you'll notice as well with the node, I'm just applying it just the very top of it there like that, so it gets bright in the middle and the stronger red stays in the recessed area like that. So as before, just apply a few coats of this, gradually getting further towards the tip and the base. As before, about 5 coats should do the job. With that done, we've now finished the transitioning of the red all the way up to the yellow, and we can just finish off with some highlights. First of all, still with Uriel Yellow, just diluted with a little bit of water this time. What we need to do is apply an edge highlight going all the way around the edge of the blade like this. So I'm using a small layer brush, and you can see how I'm just using the side of my brush rather than the tip of it, just to contact a small bit of the blade like this, and I'm running all the way down across the red area as well. Now if you want to, you can paint that central ridge in the blade as well. You don't have to, but if you decide you want to, for this, you just need to use the tip of your brush, so just make sure it's nice and focused like this. Hold your hands as steady as possible and just follow it all the way down like this. And finally, we're going to add a very fine highlight of white scar to the very sharpest parts of the sword. So we're looking at areas such as the brightest part along here, the cutting edge, just running down like that, just to emphasize the sharpness of the blade on the very tip, and then a little bit on the back of it there as well. Now also, if you're doing a power sword, be sure just to add a little bit of this color to the energy node as well. And there we are, with that highlight applied, this Hellforged blade is now complete. So when you're using this technique, there's a real key thing to remember, and that is whilst you are diluting the paint heavily using Lamy medium, when you apply it to the miniature, you must make sure that you apply it very thinly. So thinly, in fact, that the first coat you won't really notice a difference on it, not until you've added 3 or 4 coats or so to build up that colour. It's important that you do this to achieve that really smooth transition from the darker areas to the lighter areas, so just have patience with it, slowly building up that colour. There you go, we really hope that you've enjoyed this video, and well, you can see there's not that much to this effect, so have fun using it, and we'll see you all again very soon.